Welcome to the Don't Count Me Out podcast. This program is dedicated to stroke survivors, loved ones, and caregivers, medical professionals, and anyone interested in learning more about this devastating disease and the warriors that face it every day. Our mission is to share stroke survivors' stories of inspiration and hope, form friendships and community, gain knowledge and insights, and the courage to dream and explore new avenues as we find our way back to living. So, my friends, the Don't Count Me Out podcast begins right now. This is someone that a lot of us have known for a few years and grown to love you and watch your story unfold. When we first met Letisha, she was going through a really difficult time in her life, and I think we'll just start there and let you tell your story as to what had happened and what you were facing.
At that time, I was leading up to having the PFO closure. So my stroke was, the underlying factor for my stroke was from the PFO, and it had been 9 years from my stroke to the closure. So during that time, it was just incredibly stressful. Just that thought of having another stroke or, surviving another stroke. Yeah, the anxiety was high all of the time. So since our last show, I have had that closure. I had that done last June, 8 months ago now, and that was successful. Scary, but successful. And so the anxiety that I have now about having another stroke has been reduced significantly.
That's just amazing. 9 years between having a stroke and then having a hole in your heart repaired. Had you known all that time that you had the hole in your heart? How did they find that?
Yeah, I didn't know prior to my stroke that I had a hole in the heart. So it was once I was in hospital and I was diagnosed, and they were doing the tests to find out what the cause was for my stroke, is when they found it. And 9 years ago, they weren't doing closures, or they didn't have enough evidence that was the best thing to do at the time. And then later on, I was told that they couldn't do them through the public hospitals. They could only do them through private. But over the space of 9 years, more evidence came forward that the closure was the best option for somebody that had had a stroke and had a hole in the heart to prevent further strokes from occurring. So yeah, I did know from my stroke up until it was closed that the hole was there and that it was the underlying factor for my strokes. Mentally, it was quite tough.
Now, you have a couple of children. Did you have your children before or after the stroke? Was that a factor in some way?
I had 3 children prior to my stroke. Yeah, so my little one, Michael, he was born after my stroke. I found out that I was pregnant with Michael about 2 months after my stroke, so June, July, yeah, about 2 months after. And the first reaction from the medical, my doctor and specialist, was not to go through with pregnancy, that it was too high risk. And then it wasn't until the second trimester that I did get the all clear, but that I'd have to be monitored weekly. So that was with liaising with the endocrinologist, the cardiologist, the obstetrician, and the neurologist. Yeah, and then I couldn't give birth to him naturally, so they wanted me to have a planned cesarean.
When you're talking anxiety for what was going on in your life, just the anxiety of having this stroke and being such a new stroke survivor. And so much happens within that first year of trying to figure out who you are as a new person and get your footing back under you, and then to be pregnant on top of it. What were some of the side effects that you had from your stroke? Were you physically, did it show?
Yeah, so I've got neurological vision loss. It's called homogeneous, I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right, hemanopia. So what that means is I've lost all of the vision on the right side of both of my eyes. So I haven't been able to drive since my stroke, and I still have a bit of weakness in my right hand. It's fully functioning now. During the pregnancy, I had really bad carpal tunnel syndrome. That resolved probably a year after he was born.
Michael is he's really a cute kid. Imagine what a joy to have him born through everything else that you were going through.
Yeah, I think he saved me because I was so depressed with the loss of identity and just not the acceptance of even having a stroke. I didn't know anyone else that was a young person that had a stroke, and I just couldn't understand. Even though they told me, I still couldn't understand, how this had happened to me. My whole life revolved around my career, and that was my identity. And so it's been really good to have him, because prior to him, I was career working mum, and now I've been able to be the stay-at-home mum and find, what really actually matters in life.
How old were you when you had your stroke?
35.
35, that is young. Oh my goodness. Well, it seems as though things have turned a corner for you. And back when I first met you, you were, I can't remember the name of the group, and I apologize for that, but you were working with young people to help them to understand how important kindness is, just for our own health and well-being. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, to me, it's so important to just be genuinely kind to others, because we just don't know what anybody else is going through. People look at me, they have no idea that I've had a stroke. They have no idea that I've got visual impairment. They don't know the anxiety that I feel when I leave the house. So we really don't know what somebody else is going through. So to me, just to be kind and just accept people who they are, where they're at, makes such a difference in people's lives. It made such a difference in my life when I was seen, heard, valued and accepted for who I am and what I've been through. I did register my business 2 years ago now, maybe 3, I'm not sure. It's called Kindness Empowers. It's evolved a little bit since it first began. The mission for it is to raise awareness and empower stroke survivors. And I do that in a few ways. I've got my T-shirts, which I donate some of the money to that to the National Stroke Foundation in Australia. And I work with, we call it in Australia the NDIS, and that stands for the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So in Australia, if you need speech therapy, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, things like that, you may be entitled to get a participant plan which gives funding or money to you. And so I work with those clients that are eligible for that funding to help them get the best supports that they need to be independent and maximise their independence and get their lives back on track after they've had a stroke. And it's important for me because I am a young stroke survivor, so I know what they've been through. I don't just look at anybody as just a number. I see them as, a human and a whole person, and get to really discover what is missing in their needs.
You can really empathize with what's going on inside the psyche. It's not just the physical. A lot of times the heavier burden is what you're feeling, as far as like you were talking about your self-worth and will I ever be able to do things like I did before. And there's all kinds of little gremlins that you have to physically and mentally every day shore yourself up to fight against them, because your body betrayed you. We take for granted that we are always going to be strong. We're always going to be able to do whatever we have to make it from today to tomorrow. And that's not necessarily true. All it takes is one stroke to make you realize there's something wrong with that kind of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And we never know. I mean, you and I, we're fortunate to have connected with so many stroke survivors around the world. Mm-hmm. And from speaking to them, I don't know one who says, I expected this to happen. Like, it took all of us by surprise. It was unexpected and completely life-altering for every single person.
So you survived the stroke, and then 9 years later, they found out that, well, they knew before that about the hole in your heart, but you always had that in the back of your mind. Are they going to be able to repair it? Will I have to live with this to the end of my life? Will my life end shortly? That's a lot to worry about, especially when you have 4 boys that you're responsible for raising. What helped you to just keep your sanity through all of that?
My mindset. I went after my stroke, and I did go to the dark places. I was very depressed. It was quite hard for a couple of years, and then I had to pull myself out of it. The only person that could save me from that was me, and I just worked on it every single day, and I still work on it every single day. You know, I had to honour myself, my beliefs, my values, and live my life according to that. And it was tough, but then it got easier. Then it just became my way of life. And I don't invalidate the experiences that I've been through, but I know that it's given me a purpose. And so for that, I think that's what makes it easier for me, knowing, you know, I'm here for a reason. I'm here, I survived, and I can do good things from that. And I don't know, I just feel like that this has become my life path now, and just knowing that every day and knowing that I can show up and make a difference to somebody else is definitely what helps me every day. And the kids, I mean, they need me more than anything else. So I try not to, well, I don't have to worry any now, but prior to having the PFO closure, it was keeping focused. And I knew that if something happened, then I did my best every day.
Well, my dear, you not only survived, but you're thriving. Some of the things that you've done, the dedication that you've shown for stroke survivors is now manifesting itself in the pages of a book. And the book is not only about you and what you've done to make this a creation for all of us, but it's also helping other stroke survivors to be able to tell their story and bring it out to the rest of us, because each story is so different and so beautiful and brings so much hope to each of the rest of us. What started you down that path? As a writer, why would you do that to yourself? You've had enough stress.
Yeah.
I said that with a great deal of love, because once you write, you can't stop. It just becomes a part of you.
Yeah, I love the writing. So the book is called Finding Yourself After Stroke, and it is a compilation book. So it's a world first. It's a book for young stroke survivors that is written by young stroke survivors. So it features the stories of, or the living experiences of 26 young stroke survivors from all over the world. So they share, you know, the lead ups that happened to their stroke, the diagnosis, their rehabilitation, their return to work. They're really candid about it. So things that, you know, like identity and relationship issues, intimacy and things like that, it's all in there. So how it started for me was, like I just said before, after my stroke, I didn't know anybody that was a young stroke survivor. I didn't know that young people could have strokes. And, you know, and then I was pregnant and raising this baby. And so I felt very isolated and alone. There was no one for me to, well, I could talk to people, but no one understood. Like I couldn't connect with anybody with my experience. And then eventually I found some online groups through Facebook, and I started connecting with people, and then I was getting on video chats with people. And then I was like, this connection, this experience, this hearing about this happening to other people, seeing what other people have been through, helping each other through things just made such a difference. I knew I could have really done something like that years ago. So I thought, why not create this gift to give to other people to read, to know that they're not alone, that their experiences are valid, that they're valued humans, that they can change their current situation, that there is hope there. And then just recently I thought, that this resource would double for like therapists and things like that to understand their patients better. Like how much value could they get out of understanding what it's like from the patient's perspective? That's how it came to life.
I agree with you wholeheartedly about that. And I know most of the doctors and nurses and physical therapists that I have talked to have been so grateful for anything that comes from the point of view of the stroke survivor, because there is not a lot out there yet. There's more and more coming, which is great. And I think that's one reason that our show tries to give a platform to any author who's written a well-written book about stroke survival, that will help other people. So,
yeah, I love that. I love that you do that.
thank you. Thinking back on your life before the stroke, and somebody asked me this question, I had to think about it for a minute. Do you consider having had a stroke as a blessing or a curse?
It's a blessing for me. I wouldn't have said that 7 years ago. I was still stuck in the why me? Why did my life turn out like this? But prior to my stroke, I thought I was living my dream. I was in the job that I always wanted to be in. I loved my career. I thought that my life was fantastic. Now I look back, I think I would never want that life.
Mm-hmm.
I would never want to be that in that situation, working 24/7. For me, it was a blessing. It put me on a better path.
I think one thing that I liked about all of the people that I've met that are stroke survivors, and not saying anything negative towards any of my other friends, but if you meet someone who is a stroke survivor or had any kind of real trauma in their lives, they don't have time for drama, and there's just too much that needs to be done. The shift in our thinking is different. Like you were saying about, other people and helping them, that we're all human beings and we all have frailties and we all have needs. And you're willing to step forward and do that to help bring other people to a better place in their life. And I think that's basically what we as human beings are really called to do if we listen.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Tell me a little bit about, you had mentioned with your book that these people are from all over the world. What are some of the countries that these people are from?
We have authors from the UK, South Africa, Europe, Australia, Korea, Cambodia, Brazil, so South America, the United States. Yeah, I think that's it. So we're covering all of the continents.
Have you noticed difference in medical treatments between these different places, or are we all pretty much on the same page?
We're all pretty well on the same page.
That's good to know.
I think there was one man who had his stroke in a European country. He said that the healthcare in Australia was a lot better. There was a lady who had her stroke in an Asian country, and she said that the healthcare there was a lot better than Australia. So I don't know. It could also depend on the doctors that you get, the specialist teams that you get, the hospital that you end up in. But mostly I think we're all pretty well on par, and I think we're all pretty well on par with that there needs to be more awareness for stroke and how to help a person once they leave the hospital. We all kind of have that same mission of filling the gap. The main theme throughout everybody's story that I have found, just thinking about it now, is that your current circumstances don't define your future. If you've just had a stroke, you've got aphasia, you can't speak as you could, that where you are right now isn't the end of your story. You can keep working on it. Neural pathways can be created. The neuroplasticity is there. Things can always change. And forever, I've seen some amazing things happen, 10 years or 20 years after somebody's stroke. So I think that was probably the most common thing, is that just don't give up.
What are some of the other stories that have stuck with you from the ones that you've read that are in the book?
I think just hearing what people go through. When I read the book, there was lots of tears. You've got people that are on a mission to live their life to the fullest. They've got a very clear vision of who they are, what their future is, what that's going to look like. It's all mapped out for them. And then all of a sudden, boom, in an instant they've had a stroke and now they can't walk, they can't talk, they can't swallow. Relationships change, everything's changed. They can't go back to their career. And it's like those reading that and how they've rebuilt themselves or have rebuilt themselves mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Again, that really stands out for me. And I always get a bit upset to the younger the person is. I'm not sure why. It's like, oh, it's because for me it's so unexpected. But now I know, stroke can happen to anybody. It can happen in utero before you're even born.
For someone who's never had a stroke, how would you describe to them that this may be a book that they would like to read? How would it help them to understand people who have survived a stroke?
I think it would definitely be an awareness thing. So to understand and take the stigma out of it as well, that, there's nothing wrong with you. You've had a stroke. It can happen for many reasons. I mean, I had the hole in my heart. I didn't know I had a hole in my heart. I had no idea that I was at risk of having a stroke. Migraines, autoimmune disorders, AVM, birth control. Not sure that I can legally say that, but that is a risk factor. For somebody who's never had a stroke to take an interest in that is that it can happen to anybody. No one expects it to happen to them until it happens to them.
In one way or another may have been affected by stroke, whether a grandparent or a neighbor down the street. There's other people, and I think that's one thing that we need to always caution with stroke survivors is no matter what you do in life, safety first. And there's certain areas in the brain that if they're affected, they do affect the way you think, and you do throw caution to the wind. So if someone in your life is telling you, you're doing something that's a little dangerous, you have to listen to them. When do you think your book is going to be out?
We're probably looking about 8 weeks, maybe June at the latest.
Maybe a good summer read. Are you accepting pre-sales on the book yet, or?
Not yet, but we will be. We'll have a special launch.
Keep us in the loop so we can let everybody else know about that. And are you considering doing a follow-up? I mean, you've got 26 wonderful people that have contributed to this. When people have a chance to read it, you're going to hear from a lot of people that have their own stories. Have you considered doing a follow-up?
I have. I've considered doing a follow-up. I've had people already express their interest in wanting to share their story for if I do a number 2. And I would also like to do the untold story of the carers. So people like husbands and wives, spouses, partners, children, family members, parents of young children that have had a stroke, to tell the story of how stroke impacted them, their experience. Because as we know, as a stroke survivor, it doesn't just impact us, it also impacts everybody else around us. So hearing from them as well.
I think that's an excellent idea. Caregivers, we wouldn't survive without the people that have been around us. Well, I know you have to go pretty soon. How much more time do we have?
Just a couple more minutes.
Well, let me just quickly ask you this. Is there something else that you would like to share with us before we say goodbye?
I absolutely love the connections. I'm so grateful that you've had me here on your show. I think that it's just really important to connect with other survivors and feel relatable, feel connected, share your journeys together.
Well, Letisha, we always love to have you. I just always look forward to seeing your posts and finding out where you are. And you've gone through an awful lot, and you've done it with a great deal of grace and dignity. And just watching you grow through all of this has just really brought me a great deal of joy to be able to call you my friend.
Thank you.
And thank you for being on the show. and good luck with the book. If you'd like to maybe drop off a little paragraph about each one of the 26 people in the next 8 weeks before the book is done, we'd be happy to put it on and let people get a flavor of what they can expect to read about these different people, if that's okay with your publishing team.
If you're okay with that, I would love to share who the authors are.
Yeah, that would be great. And I know you have to go. I know you've got active young men that are in your household right now that need you. Letisha happens to live in Queensland, right? Queensland, Australia. It's 7:30 here in America at night. And for her, we started the interview at 10:30 in the morning the following day. So she's already living in Friday while we're still back in Thursday. That's one of the things I love about working with Zoom. We can be all over the world.
Yeah, I love it too.
Okay, well, my friend, we will see you soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you.